What's up, fellow ecom nerds? It is Andrew. I am back with the promised SEO video. I have finally got it out for you. Sorry it's taken so long. Like I mentioned, had some issues with the live stream the other day when I tried to do it, and then also my equipment stuffed up a bit. So figured everything out, and now it is ready to rock and roll. So I'm going to break this up into 4 parts, I've decided. So today we're going to focus on-page SEO. Then next week we're going to look at content. So content SEO, which is part of on-page SEO, but I was going to break this up into 2. Then we're going to look at link building, and then last we're going to look at apps, and then also some technical SEO, so some more technical stuff. So we're going to leave that till last, which is more of the advanced stuff. So we'll get through all of this first. So like I said, we're going to cover SEO on page today, and then we're going to cover content next week, then link building the week after, and then finally we're going to look at technical SEO. The other thing I want to mention is that a lot of you have been asking, do I do consulting? And funny enough, I've decided to actually open that up now. I've had a few people ask me now. So I've got that all set up and ready to go. So I want to have an early list of people that want to try out the service. So I will leave a link in the description below where you can sign up for that if you're interested in me having a look at your store and having a look at just your marketing strategy and everything like that. And we can go through all of that live over a Zoom call. So usually you can book me out for an hour or 2. I'll work out the pricing a bit later as well, but it's probably going to be about 100 to 150 Australian dollars an hour. But for anyone who gets on the list early, I've decided to do $100 flat rate forever for those people. So if you really want to have me have a look at your site, have a look at your marketing, then make sure you sign up on the link below. So without further ado, let's get into today's topic, which is what I mentioned, which is kind of like the first part of on-page SEO. And next week will be the second part of on-page SEO, which will be diving more into the content, how to write a content piece, how to make it interesting. We'll talk a little bit about writing on other platforms like Medium and also Quora as well, which I've done both. And I'll show you how I go about writing those and just a bit of success that I've had on those platforms, but also how you can then create your own blogs on your e-commerce store. So let's get into it. So SEO is my favorite topic, I think, of all time. It's something that I'm very passionate about still. You've seen a lot of issues happening with third-party tracking, happening around Facebook ads and now soon to be Google ads in 2022. So I think it's now more important than ever to actually skill up in SEO. And also email marketing, which we'll probably touch on in a couple of months as well, if not next month. So I think those are the 2 big ones you really want to work on going forward, which is SEO and email marketing. Just because the way the advertising kind of ecosystem is going, it's a little bit topsy-turvy, a little bit turbulent. So just want to make sure that you can actually, do what matters and actually focus on some skills that will help you get free traffic in the long run. So maybe not right at the beginning, but it will definitely compound over time and you'll get free traffic. So we'll talk a little bit about that now. So what I want you to think of when you think of SEO is it's not a sprint. It is not a 100-meter sprint or 200-meter sprint. It is a marathon. So it takes a long time to actually get traction. It can take up to 6 months to maybe sometimes like 12 months, even longer, depending on what niche you're in and also what you're trying to rank for as well. So you've got to think of it more like that, and almost like investing is how I look at it. So you want to think of it like you're investing in something, and you're going to get that compounding interest, but it's going to happen over time. It's not going to happen straight away. So SEO is very much like that. So if you see any of these, well, I'm going to call it as these knobs out there, these gurus who are pretty much saying that you're going to get rich really quick on SEO and et cetera, that's not the case at all. It's going to take a while. There is no get rich quick in SEO. It's going to take you time. There are shortcuts you can take. If you want to go really kind of black hat, I hate using that term because it's kind of stupid now, but when I mean black hat, I mean if you really want to do some things that are outside of Google's terms of service, then you may get shortcuts, but you might also get penalties as well. So there are shortcuts, but they usually lead down the road of penalties, which is not good. And another big misconception is that a lot of people think SEO is free. It's not really free, because at the beginning it takes time and it's going to cost you time, and time, obviously, especially your time, is money. And the other thing too is you're actually going to have to pay to build links or pay someone to go and do link building for you, because that takes a long time. You're going to be sitting there for ages, reaching out to people, so doing outreach. We will cover this in the link building topic as well, but just for now, know that it's not really free at the beginning. It's going to take a little bit of money, a little bit of time, which I said is also money, to get up and running with SEO. So don't ever think that SEO is free right away. But down the line, you'll definitely get free traffic. Again, think of it like the compounding interest in the investing sense, and you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. Another little misconception when it comes to SEO is we look at things like domain authority or site authority. But John Mueller here has an interesting take on this, and he's saying that Google ranks web pages and not websites. So in other words, they look at individual pages to rank over websites in general. So when you see things in, say, something like SEMrush or like KW Finder or one of your keyword tools, you'll see this thing called like ranking difficulty. And I think that that's kind of depends on the site. Like it kind of gives you a general overview or a very averaged, difficulty score. But I think that in general, it's going to depend on how your site is going. Is your site established? Has it been around for many years? Is it getting lots of traffic? All of that sort of thing. So that can obviously reduce how hard it is for you to rank for a particular topic when you're looking at doing content marketing. So just think of it like this, that Google ranks pages, not whole websites. So you can actually have a few good pages that rank really well, and your site overall may not rank really well. So just take that into consideration. Next, I want to talk about site structure or powering up your site. Now, this kind of delves into a little bit of technical SEO, and so I don't want to go too far into it because it's going to confuse you too quickly. But how you set up your site is really important because it's going to determine how quickly a user can find information, and especially the information that they need. So forget about the whole ranking for Google thing or creating a structure for Google thing, and think more about your customer up front when you're doing content. You don't want something that's at least probably more than 4, maybe even 3 clicks away from how far they need to get to access that. So if they're looking for something like a product, it shouldn't be more than 3 clicks away for them to reach that product, or it's going to frustrate them, and it's going to affect things like time on site and that sort of thing, where they bounce off and go somewhere else. So in the long run, that's how it can actually affect your overall SEO score, by having a really crappy, too deep of a structure when it comes to site structure. So you want to keep everything flat. So I'll give you an example here. So you might want to have something like a home page, which is obviously a big one, and then your collections pages. And then, you might have a guide page or an ultimate guide page, and then a blog. And I'll tell you why they're a little bit different in a bit. And then you're going to have all of your products underneath. And then all these link or can link together depending on the relevancy. So if you've got a little, what we call hub and spoke thing going on, where you might have a topic around, say, something like dog beds, then there might be a whole bunch of different topics you've got around that main topic as well. So that's where I think that the ultimate guide differs from like a blog. And as we talk about content next week, we'll get in and talk a little bit more about why you want to separate these out. Even though they're kind of both content pieces or content hubs, you actually want to separate these. So we'll talk about that next week. But it's all about link juice and passing around the link juice. So if you've got a page that is ranking really well in Google, you want to make sure that you're distributing that to other relevant pages so they can also help get those ranked, and also to help customers find them a lot easier, or users to find them a lot easier as well. So just think about that. Another thing we need to talk about, where a lot of people get tripped up and confused when they're looking at SEO, they hear this term get thrown out there and they get confused in terms of what it means. Even though this relates a lot to technical SEO, I do want to mention it just quickly in today's video so you understand, or at least get a brief overview of what it is. So crawl budget is the number of pages a crawler is set to crawl on a certain period of time. Once your budget has been exhausted, the web crawler will stop accessing your site's content and move on to other sites. So once your allocated crawl budget has been exhausted, the crawler, so let's say, for instance, the Google Spider, will move on and crawl other sites. So crawl budgets are different for every website, and your site's crawl budget is established automatically by Google, and it kind of stays pretty constant throughout as well. So how is it determined? Google usually looks at 4 main factors when it comes to allocating crawl budget. So these are site size. Bigger sites require more crawl budget. Server setup, a site's performance or load times may affect on how crawl budget is allocated. Updates frequently. So the more you update your site, obviously, and the more regularly you do that, then Google will prioritize your site more often. So this is something that can confuse some people, because when we talk about content, some people think they need to write a blog post every week. That's technically not what we're talking about. We're talking about how often we actually update the site, change things on the site, update maybe articles that are old, fix dead, broken links, all of that sort of thing. So the more we do that, the more frequent more frequently that we go in and fix those things, Google is more likely to give us more allocation of crawl budget. The other thing is links. So internal linking structure and dead links are factored into the crawl as well, which I just mentioned. So if you've got pages that are dead and you get rid of those, and it'll help the spider kind of crawl through your website a lot easier. So once that's done, it also helps with the customers as well and the users, because if they can find things easier, don't always think about the crawler or the spider, think about the person using it as well. If you can make it easier for them because they're the ones that are actually buying your products or reading your blogs or whatever it is, make sure you do that where you can as well. So if there's dead pages or pages that you can maybe combine together, maybe it's a good way of actually going through and just making sure you keep your house tidy, and everything will be a lot better that way. So the next question might be, does the crawl budget even matter? Well, yes, if you're wasting a crawl budget on pages that shouldn't really be there, then that's not a good thing. Or having a weird internal structure that doesn't make sense also just makes it harder for the user as well. So don't think it's always about the spider and the spider crawling your website. Think about the user and how they're flowing through your site. Can they find the information easily? Can they get it in the 3 clicks that we talked about? So try and always think about the user first. And if you do that, then it's going to make how your website's crawled a lot easier anyway, because if you think about the spider like a person and how it would use it, then that's how I would optimize my site. Now you can see a few takeaways from John Mueller from Google, who says things like crawl budget is overrated. Most sites never need to worry about it, only the big ones really. So, if you've got a small site, it's less important. And another one where he's answering a question here, and he says, sure, it's important to be honest about the size and potential effect of the crawl. If we can crawl 50K pages from your site, will going from 1,000 to 900 pages in total change anything for crawling? Not really, but it might improve conversion. So again, what he's talking about there is what I mentioned, which is you should always think about the customer or the user. Now, if the user can find things easier, then it's always a win-win to remove pages that shouldn't really be there, find 404s, redirect them, all of that stuff. So make sure that you're keeping your house tidy for your user first, and then for Google second. That's how I always like to look at SEO. So make sure you always focus on the user or the user experience first, because that's also a really big ranking factor going in. The UX signals for Google is massive in terms of ranking. So just always think about the user first when you're thinking about optimizing a site, before you worry too much about the crawler and just Google in general. Now I quickly want to talk about search engines as well, and some that people overlook. Now Yahoo used to be the most popular search engine back in the day. I remember that when I was a kid in high school, starting to show my age a little bit, that Yahoo was the one thing that we used, and then Google came in. Google was much better. But now there's other options as well. There's DuckDuckGo, which is becoming more important because people are more worried about privacy and being tracked across the internet and tracked across their search. So that is a really popular platform now. It's up and coming, and you should also make sure that you are looking to optimize your SEO for these as well. Microsoft Bing is another one, obviously. But there's a few others that people don't think about, and I think these are really important as well. And we talk about image search and video search. So these are search engines in their own right, and they're probably the biggest ones in their category. So when we look at image search, Pinterest is more like a search engine than it is a social media site. A lot of people get that confused, but it's actually, Pinterest acts way more like a search engine than it does a social media site. We're going to talk about Pinterest in probably a couple of weeks as well. It's something I've been using for my clients, and something I'm going to be using for my streetwear brand, which I'm working on. So I have found that it is very good and gives you a lot of great benefits when it comes to SEO, and also when it comes to advertising as well. They're very cheap, and the ad also has a flow-on effect to ranking well as well on the platform. So Pinterest is a great one to start looking at. And then YouTube obviously is pretty obvious, but it is the biggest video search engine. It's probably the second biggest search engine outside of Google. So I would say that it's another one you want to focus on. If you're not really keen on doing lots of writing and doing blog posts and things like that, then YouTube is obviously the place you want to be, and you want to be ranking on YouTube so people can find your content. I like to have a mixture of both. So I would have written content and then also video content as well. And I can actually embed the video content into my written content, which also helps with how long people stay on the page. So how sticky the page is, and the more time people spend on the site, because Google's not looking at what the person's actually doing on the page. So they might be on the page looking at a video, but Google might think that people are actually reading through all of your content, and they're spending 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes doing that when they're actually watching a video. So it's always good to have embedded content in there, even if it's not your videos and you can take it from somewhere else on YouTube and embed it into an article. I would always try and do that because it definitely does help with that time on site signal that Google take into consideration when they're ranking your website. So have a think about that as well. Now, I think there's been a bit of a shift happening where we're moving more away from keywords specifically and looking more at topic-based research. So back in the day, obviously keyword research was massive, and there was things like keyword stuffing, and you could see how many times you could use the keyword on the same page, and you just stuff it in there as many times as possible, and that would help you rank. Obviously, Google's got a lot smarter than that now. They've implemented things around natural language processing and also their Rank Brain project, and it's becoming way more intelligent now. And they're looking for intent more than they are looking at keywords. So they're looking at topics, and they're looking at how well your piece of content that you're offering helps that customer at that time trying to solve their problem. So they're looking at intent. How relevant is your topic or piece of content to what that searcher is looking for? And Google's getting smart, and they can start to figure that out and put 2 and 2 together. So is keyword research dead? No, but topics are still way more important, I think, and topic clusters. So these are becoming way more important, and there's some great tools out there that will help you do this sort of research. I think Surfer SEO is one of my new favorites. There's also BuzzSumo and a few of those websites as well that will help you not only figure out topics, but how popular topics are as well, how they're getting shared, how many shares they've got, what platforms they're being shared on. Because obviously if you're writing content, you want people to share, and that's how you're going to get a lot of potential backlinks, not from the actual social websites themselves like Facebook and stuff, because they're usually no follow links. And again, that might confuse some people. We'll talk about that more when we talk about link building. But let's just say that follow links is what you want, and usually a lot of social websites don't have that. What I'm talking about is that someone from somewhere else who like another site might see that your piece of content and decide to link to it because they think it's highly relevant. So I think that those kind of tools will definitely become more important, especially things like Surfer. We'll talk a lot about Surfer next week when we talk about writing content, because I think it's a really cool tool. And then we could just layer keyword research on top of those things as well. The other thing we're going to talk about when we talk about topics is the logic path and how long it takes for someone to get from point A to B to C. What does that look like as well? So at the beginning, what are they doing? Are they just unsure about if they even need this thing, or maybe they don't understand what this thing does? To the fact where they're going to start comparing things together. So let's say it's a video camera. They might go, do I need this video camera? Okay, cool, I do. So then they're doing a little bit more research around, do I need HD? Do I need 4K? Do I need 8K? Then they go, okay, cool, I know kind of what I need. Then they're going to look at brands. So it could be comparing brands together, could be comparing other features as well. So they're trying to find the best one. Once they have the product in mind that they want, then they're going to move to, okay, I want to buy this product. And then it's going to be around pricing, where do I get it from, and all of that sort of thing. Maybe even delivery and that sort of stuff as well. So you got to think about closing off the journey when you're thinking about topics as well. It's not just about writing one piece of content or one massive skyscraper piece of content anymore, even though that's still really important. It still definitely works. I think that you got to think about moving them from point A, B, and C, and having a piece of content that addresses all of those different steps as well in the decision-making process. So that's really important now as well going forward with SEO. You want to make sure that you're having a piece of content on all parts of the user journey. And going back to the logical path and intent flow, this is something Google looks at as well, we think. So Google wants to make sure that they can complete a searcher's journey from point A to Z or A to B, whatever it might be. So they actually want to rank content that will help people do that, or help their users find what they're looking for. So you start kind of with discovery and awareness about something. So there's a lot of questions at this point. Then you get to consideration, which is a lot more about reviews and comparisons, and just almost like validating that they need what they need, and from what they found in point A in terms of discovery and awareness. Then they want to kind of back that up and make sure that they actually need this thing, and they're going to consider all options, and that's where they're going to do that kind of more deeper research. And then at the very bottom, it's about buying, where they're going to get it from, pricing, delivery, warranties, all of that stuff. They're going to be looking at that at the end. And then that's probably where they're going to start looking at your store as well, and figuring out based on reviews and things if you're a trusted provider of this service or product as well. So if we look at the intent flow topics research in terms of an actual live example, then we might look at something around dog beds. And this is where a lot of people might get confused. They have a big dog. What kind of bed do they need? Do they, what sort of material is it? If they've got an old big dog, what kind of cushioning do they need? Is it waterproof? Because some old dogs, unfortunately, don't have great control of their bladders anymore. All that sort of thing can come into questions around discovery and awareness in terms of what they need. So things that you could be writing at this stage could be things around best dog beds for large dogs. You can have an ultimate guide for that. Best dog beds for German Shepherds if the person is actually looking for German Shepherd beds. So you might want to have you could do content per breed, or you could just have a really long piece of content that talks about each breed and what bed they should have. I mean, there's many ways to slice it up. But this, you just want to kind of do a little bit of research in what kind of questions people are asking around these topics, and we're going to talk about a tool that will help you to do that in a second. Then they're going to look at things like reviews and comparisons, so comparing different brands, different features of each brand and product. So this is, again, where you might have an ultimate guide, or you might just have a whole bunch of blog posts addressing these different questions that come up. Then obviously we're looking at decision execution. So these are probably more like your collection pages, and then flowing down to product page. So collection page might be like large dog beds, and then then you'd have kind of a product for each one that sits under there, and then small dog, etc., etc. So this is how you kind of split it up, and you've got to start thinking about the process that someone goes through when they're actually looking to review the product. And like I said in a previous video, I look at the jobs to be done methodology, not so much about demographics and things when I'm looking at research. I'm actually thinking about the job that someone's trying to get done when they're going through the research process, and this is really important. What are they trying to solve? Make sure you're working this in to your content piece that you're writing. Now, a big mistake that I see a lot of people make when they're writing content is they focus too much on what Google wants to see and not so much what the user wants to see. So they're thinking about, how can I stuff this keyword in here, or how can I do this thing that helps Google crawl my site, or et cetera, et cetera. You should be, at this stage when you're writing content, you should have done your research in terms of what the customer or user is looking for. And then you should focus on making that piece of information the best piece of information it can be to help that user. So make it give it a lot of utility. So make sure that they can go away and it'll help them make a decision, help them solve a problem. So you want to make sure that the content is actually, you're running it for a human first and machine second. So don't write for machines, write for the person when you think about running your content. It's probably the biggest thing I see people do. They try and get too tricky, try and trick Google. You can't trick Google anymore. Make sure that you write for the customer, because that is the person who's going to be buying or potentially buying your product. So just make sure that the content is really, really useful to them. Now, a tool that I like to use is Answer the Public. So it gives me a very brief overview of some topics and some questions that are around something potentially I'm trying to sell or that I'm trying to write for. So let's pick something interesting. Let's go video cameras. So I've got dogs, and we talk a lot about dogs here. And you can see that it's broken down here. But let's go on and have a look at Answer the Public and talk and have a look and see what we can get out of, or what information we can get out of Answer the Public for video cameras. So this is Answer the Public. You can do a few free searches on here, which is really handy. But then after that, you're going to have to pay for it. So you only get a certain amount of uses every day before you get locked out, and then you actually have to pay. But let's start with this. The guy's nodding his head in agreement with me. Cool. Video camera. Let's go plural, and I'll show you what it kind of looks like and how you can kind of get an idea for how to use this tool effectively. So you can see here that I've put in video cameras, and then there's all these questions around the topic of video camera. You've got things like where, will, who, how, why. So you can start to break this down. I like to use this view because the other ones are a little bit too all over the place. You can see, like, are video cameras obsolete? Are video cameras still used? So this might be around someone who's at the very beginning and they're like, do I need a mobile phone to solve my problem? Do I need a DSLR? Or do I need an actual video camera or camcorder? Do I even need a camcorder anymore? Maybe my phone will do, or maybe my DSLR camera will do. So you got to think about this as well. At the very beginning, what are people looking for? You can say, can video cameras take pictures? So these are like some very basic questions you could have in a FAQ kind of page, FAQ page. And just kind of gives you some ideas. And from here, this is where I do some research around keyword volume. So I'd either have something like KW Finder, or I'd have just even something like the Google keyword tool, and go in and put these in to see what sort of volume comes out of it as well. So you can see here, there's a lot of great places you can start from. It gives you a kind of a seed ideas in terms of what questions people are asking, and then you can kind of go through, do your research. I'd even export this onto a spreadsheet and then do some lookups on a tool, something like KW Finder, which we'll talk about next week more when we do a bit of keyword research to layer on top. So we can start to look for that as well. We can start to type some of these into Google and make sure they make sense. So, and then we can kind of get an idea of maybe where to go to from there. So if I go to video cameras obsolete, so you think camcorder, do camcorder still make sense? So there's a whole bunch of question things here, as well as a question box. And so this might answer that question, and then once you've answered that question, it might be on to the next thing, which is, let's see if we can go back here. Let's say we're a YouTuber. Let's say that the problem that we're trying to solve is, I'm a YouTuber and I want to find the best camera for me. So I'm like, okay, do I even need a camcorder? Maybe I don't. Maybe I need a DSLR. So from there, it's like, okay, cool. I'm getting some ideas from here. Do I need a DSLR? I'm going to get a DSLR. So, or what kind of camera should I use? I'm going to look at here and see what video cameras do YouTubers use, because I'm a YouTuber and I'm trying to look for cameras. So that makes sense, right? And then here, okay, I've got some. And then by looking at this, I'm like, okay, well, it looks like the DSLR are more important than camcorders, or this is something that that YouTubers are using more, which is the DSLR and not so much the camcorder. So okay, I've got some ideas around different brands and cameras and things like that. So that kind of answered that question really quickly. So then now I might want to start reviewing the specs on each one of these and see what makes sense, and the pricing. And that's where we get to that decision-making stage, which is the reviews. Before we even get to, okay, where do I buy the camera from? We want to know what camera we want to buy. So this is why I said it's really good to dig in and kind of go niche when you're looking at breaking down the question or the job to be done for someone. So they're looking for a camera, but why? Why do they need a camera? Okay, so that's really important. Something I should have mentioned at the beginning was, why do they need the camera? That's something you've got to consider. Is it because they want to do underwater photography or videography or whatever it might be? So, okay, if that's the case, what do I need to look for there? So underwater camera, and we might have a look at that in a sec if I can go back and use more of this. But you can see here, there's a lot of different things that we can look for. Video cameras for sale. So this could be more when we start to look at, here's another one. So this could be something else we add to here. So the other thing we might want to do as well is group like things together or relevant things together. So with this other one we saw, which is what video cameras do YouTubers use, we might also use or group together this one here, which is video cameras for YouTube. And we can probably combine that. And I think Google would probably even understand that if I type this or the other one, they would probably serve the same piece of content, because it's technically the same intent. It's very similar. So there's some other things here as well. So you can kind of go through, look at comparisons. So again, we talked about comparisons when people start to compare. Video cameras and their prices, video cameras and tripods, video cameras like GoPro. So, do they want a GoPro? Do they want a DSLR? There's a lot of different things you can have in here. And this is a great tool for just getting started and kind of figuring out some seed things. So here's some actual video camera stuff, video cameras for sale, video cameras for YouTube. Again, we saw that up there before. So if I went back and I said, okay, so maybe it's not YouTube we're looking for a camera for, we're looking for doing underwater photography. Okay, now I have the underwater photography topic pulled up here, and we can have a look and see. So again, this is the job to be done. We're going to pretend we are someone who is looking to buy a camera to do underwater photography. Sorry if you can hear my dog snoring. He is pretty loud. He's a Cavalier, so he just kind of snores his head off. He sounds like a chainsaw. So what is I think this stuff we could probably cover, but if we're looking for someone who is, I think they would have done their research and they probably know what underwater photography is. So when did underwater photography begin? These are very generic. So again, you can kind of look through and see where it might make sense to begin. So which camera for underwater? So this is where we're starting to get a lot more hot now in terms of what topics you might want to delve into, which lens. So this would be a good one as well. So all this makes sense. And then we can look at the other one as well. Underwater photography for beginners. So we could do a whole ultimate guide for that, because if you're especially a new person, you don't understand what camera you need, then this is probably a good guide we could write around this, and we could do some research around keywords and topic value and all that sort of stuff. So this is a really cool tool, as you can see, for just doing some prospecting and getting some ideas. But like I said, don't forget about the jobs to be done. Think about your ideal customer and what they're trying to solve. What problem is it? So if it's underwater photography, if it's buying a bed for a dog, just think about getting as specific as possible. So if it's buying a dog for buying a bed for a dog, not a dog for a bed, then what kind of dog is it? Is it a German Shepherd? Is it a Great Dane? Because even though they're both big dogs, a Great Dane, as most dog lovers would know, is a huge dog. So it would need a way bigger bed than a German Shepherd, and obviously has different things around, maybe its hips and things like that if it's getting older, and arthritis and all that sort of thing. So you've got to think about getting as niche as possible. If you've got a bed that's perfect for dogs with arthritis or large dogs with arthritis, then you want to write content around that. So anyone who's looking for that sort of content can find it and begin their journey and close off their journey, hopefully on your site, by buying a product. So we're going to talk more about content hubs and writing those things next week when we talk about content. But just take into consideration that you always want to think about when you're writing your user and the problem they're trying to solve. Okay, so just remember that. The next thing we want to talk about is don't rank for crowded topics or crowded keywords. So what do I mean by that is, even though you might be ranking number one on the SERP or search engine results page, like Google, number one on the Google's first page, you might be competing with a whole bunch of other things like Google Shopping, carousels, other Google ads, maps, question boxes, all of that sort of thing. So make sure when you're looking at a topic and you've decided on what you really want to start writing for, when you're looking to write that piece of content, see how crowded the page is as well. So looking at underwater cameras again and typing that in, we can see this one's not too bad. So we've got all your listings for Google Shopping. You've got some research boxes here from underwater cameras. So these are more comparisons. Might be a little bit too early for someone looking to buy, because they might not understand what they need just yet and how deep the camera can go. Like, there's lots of questions they might have. So this might be a little bit too early for them. But you can see here, you've got an underwater photography guide. So that is ranking number one, number two. But then if you were trying to rank number 3 or 4, if it's really competitive, you'd be pushed under this maps page here, this question box, and that's where the next one comes in, which is here. This is pretty cool because it's got a few other question boxes underneath it, but you can see it's a little bit crowded. It's a little bit crowded, but I mean, it's to be expected. So what you want to try and do is find topics that aren't chock-a-block on the page of all these things, because even if you're ranking number one sometimes, or even ranking well like number 3 or 4, you're getting pushed beneath all this other stuff, which isn't great. So if we look at another topic or keyword that we saw when we were looking at Answer the Public, you can see here that the beginner's guide to underwater photography is a lot better keyword or topic to be ranking for, because there's not much other stuff going on. There's some ads, but they're on the right-hand side of the page, and the organic position here is number 1. So this is actually number 1 here. There's no ads pushing it down. There's no maps pushing it down. There's no question boxes pushing it down, or Google Shopping. This is a pretty nice one to rank for. But I guess the other thing you got to consider too is how much volume does this get per month as well in terms of search volume. So this could get way less than the other one, but it's not always about search volume as well. Even though, let's say that underwater cameras was getting, as a keyword or topic, was getting 10,000 or let's say 20,000 searches a month, and beginner's guide to underwater photography is only getting 2,000. Well, one, you're not competing with all that stuff that was pushing it down before, and number 2 is you got to think about click-through rate as well. Click-through rate is really important when it comes to ranking factors and ranking signals, and this is maybe a lot more relevant for the person as well, because maybe the person you're looking to tap into or help out doesn't really know a lot about underwater photography just yet, and just shoving in cameras straight away, it's going to confuse them. Where this will give them, this is a good point to write an ultimate guide or a really long piece of content that taps into a lot of other questions and combine a lot of other questions that might help them get to that next stage, which is, okay, then I understand more about this. What camera do I need to buy? What type of camera now has been answered? So then, okay, what brand do I need? How many meters do I need to go down? How waterproof does it have to be, essentially? So that might help out as well. One other thing I want to mention really quickly, when you're looking at the user experience or UX experience or UX signal for Google, is make sure that your mobile experience is really top-notch for the customer. So a lot of people in the awareness and consideration and even comparison stage, they're probably going to be on their mobile. And even though when they go to buy, it's more likely to happen on a desktop, you want to make sure that by then they know your brand, they've read all your content, and they found it really easy to look through when they're on their train, ride home, or whatever that might be when they're on their mobile. So make sure mobile is really, really looked after when you're creating your user experience, and also make sure your checkout and everything works really well for mobile as well, because more and more people are actually checking out on their mobile as well. So this is becoming more and more important when it comes to Google and the ranking factors and all that sort of thing. So don't skint on your mobile experience. The other thing too is a lot of people get confused around meta descriptions, and they think that meta descriptions will help them rank. It does and it doesn't. So meta descriptions are more like, if you think like ads, they're the thing that entice people to come onto your page, and you want to make sure that you've got all your USPs on there. If you've got free shipping, fast delivery, hard to find or rare items, that's all in the meta description. And then also the description of the product or whatever it is they're looking at, the page, fits really nicely and doesn't get cut off by Google. So if we look at this, there's an example below on dog beds online, low prices, free shipping, pet circle. So this is more in the title. So this is all in the title here. And then we've got fuzzy dog beds, heating dog beds. And these are more like site links, but here you can see shop brands for dog and puppy beds online. So this makes a lot of sense if we're looking for that at low prices, which is really important because they're talking about price point with fast shipping. So really good there. And then they've got some brands as well. So the avid dog lover would know maybe what brands they are. They know they can get free shipping. They know there's kind of low prices or competitive pricing. And there's dog and puppy beds in there as well, and all sorts of brands. So this is really good. There's a lot of stuff in here. Pet Circle did a really good job on their meta description. So let's go and have a look at, let's type this in to Google and see what comes up when we look at meta descriptions. Now for this one, let's do large dog beds. Okay, we can see here lots of ads, but then if we move down, so this is, again, where we were looking at before, large and small, all dogs need a dry, comfortable place to rest. So this is where they might have made a little bit of a mistake because it's actually cut off. You can see this ... which means the description's too long. This is pet barn, so they didn't do as good of a job as Pet Circle did. So they got a large range of pet dogs, great, but there's no real USPs. And if I was looking at Pet Barn and Pet Circle, then Pet Circle's way better. I know they've got low pricing, they've got free shipping and all that sort of great stuff. They've got a lot of brands. They do puppy and dog beds. This one, yes, I can understand they got large and small dogs, but if I was looking at those side by side, I'd probably go for Pet Circle. The only problem is these guys are ranking better than. So if this is, no, it's still not there. I'm trying to find them. So the Pet Circle's way down here, and again on this particular example, not so good. So I think if I went to dog beds, so this is probably their collection page, and we're going to find this out. If I can find it again. Yeah, so this is the one we kind of looked at before. Shop top brands, dog and puppy beds, online at low prices and fast free shipping. So again, it looks a lot better than some of the other ones here. This is that ... They didn't do a really good job at concatenating the description and making it easy to read. And again, you want to go as low when it comes to characters as well, like low as possible to make sure it's showing up really nicely on mobile as well, like I mentioned. And you're not getting that ... So if I click on this, let's see if it's a collections page. Okay, so here you can probably see that this is I'd say even more of a category page on a collections page. How would I fix this? I would probably split this up and have maybe like another page in front of this one when I click through, because we're still two clicks away. So I'd have go into here, and then on this page I'd have something like large dog, small dog, special needs, or like arthritis or something like that, and they can click on it and then go through to a collections page with all the different beds that relate to whatever they just clicked on. So that's 3 clicks away, and technically 3 beds away, and then they can see what they're after, and it's more specific to what they're actually searching for by having a page in front of this. So they did great on the meta description, but I think just in terms of how this is laid out, I would probably put one more page in front of this and make it easy for someone to click through and find more relevancy in the products they're looking for. So I know we have a whole video dedicated to link building coming up, but I just want to mention it quickly, even before we start writing content, because this is also going to help a little bit in terms of when we do our gap analysis or link gap analysis. We don't always need many links to rank. Sometimes we don't need any links at all, depending on what we're actually trying to write for, the topic we're trying to rank for. So you don't always need links to rank a page. It will depend on what your competitor's backlink profile looks like for that page. So you always got to look at the other people that are being ranked on Google for that specific keyword or topic that you're trying to rank for. What does theirs look like? So if you all of you have no backlinks, then it's going to come down to a few other signals, which could be click-through or relevance or UX experience or whatever else might be there. So just think about that as well. You don't always need backlinks for everything, but wherever possible, you should be looking to build natural backlinks. And what I mean by natural, it means you're not paying for guest posts. You are not doing a link for link thing where, I'll give you a link. If you give me a link, Google knows that that's kind of shady and it'll definitely pick up on that eventually. So don't do that. You just want natural backlinks, and that could be just sharing your content on social media. Make sure you're boosting that content, and then you're also looking to get backlinks from other places. And then if you really struggle with getting natural backlinks, you can actually pay someone, say an admin or an assistant, or someone who's, I would say even better, is someone who has a lot of experience in this field to go and do the outreach for you, because outreach takes a crap ton of time. And I think as someone who's trying to run a site, you'd be much better having that time spent writing more content or creating more products or whatever it might be. So try and outsource that if you can. And you can still get natural backlinks by having someone who knows how to outreach and how to get people interested in linking back to you. There could be other things like natural PR links, public relation links. So if you get into a newspaper, or you can get a write-up in a newspaper, that might also help, or write up in an online forum or an online online magazine, or something of that nature, like a business, think of entrepreneur.com or something like that. If you can get a guest post in there or get them to link back to your post, that would be really good. And you could actually pay someone to go through and look for these things rather than you have to do it yourself. So I always say, if you're going to do link building and you don't have a lot of time, or I would even say even better, a lot of experience, then you're probably better off paying someone else to do this who has already have a lot of experience in this field, because you don't want to waste time doing this when you can be doing other things that are probably going to move the needle a lot better. But I will say, however, buying guest posts and legitimate links from quality providers is still a viable strategy. This still works. Just depends on where you're buying them from. I'm going to cover that in link building in terms of the people that I think are really quality in terms of providing backlinks and guest posts. So you want to make sure that not everything is a bought link, and you want to try and have a mix of natural backlinks and high quality purchase backlinks. But you don't want to do things like PBNs, because it's just a little bit dodgy unless you're building them yourself, and that's going to take a lot of time. And I'm not going to go into public blog networks in this video. Maybe I'll talk about and touch on it in terms of when I talk about technical SEO, but I would say don't worry about that. If you're buying them from somewhere else and they're PBNs, that's usually dodge, and eventually those things get found out by Google and your site will get stepped on. And if you're building out those yourself, there's a whole process around this, and it's not as easy as you might think it is. Even if there's gurus telling you how easy it is, it's tough. It's a tough one, so I'd steer away from PBNs. And if you've got any questions around PBNs, just leave them in the comments below if you don't understand what that is. We'll talk about that in the technical SEO video. But I will also give you a link around places that I purchase links from and I think that are good providers. Then you can go away and do your own research and decide. I don't like pushing things on you. I don't do affiliate stuff, so you can make up your own mind. So the other thing we're going to talk about just quickly is link gap analysis. So like I mentioned, you can rank not even having any links if other competitors or pieces of content don't have backlinks as well. So from other sites, say if they don't have backlinks and yours doesn't have backlinks, then it's going to depend on other signals where Google will look at to kind of determine where they're going to rank your page compared to the other ones that might be similar to the topic. So just think about that as well. Do some research, and we'll talk about that when we do link building as well. We'll actually use SEMrush to do some gap analysis. You could also use something like Ahrefs. I love Ahrefs when it comes to link building and doing anything around link analysis. It's just so expensive. If they could not be so expensive, I'd probably use them more, but SEMrush does the same thing, and I just find that a little bit more competitively priced. That's why I usually use SEMrush more. And look at domain ratings as well, the DR scores. So obviously when you're looking at links from like backlinks from other sites, like what are those sites ranked in terms of domain rating? Are they higher? Are they over 30? Are they over 50? And we'll talk about more. We'll talk more around that in link building as well. But link gap analysis will also be really important when it comes to figuring out how many links you need to keep your page ranked highly on the first page and all that sort of thing. So we will talk about that in video 3. Now, the last thing I'm going to be talking about is some tools of the trade and some things that I use when it comes to writing content and doing my research. So Surfer SEO is becoming a tool that I really starting to like. It'll tell you what keywords to use in terms of what to put in the titles, what to put in the descriptions, but I just use it as a guide, and I don't want anyone to think if they use this keyword this many times that they're going to rank better. It's more of a guide to say, okay, compared to the people on the first page, how many times are they using this keyword or variations to this keyword? So it's more like a really good guide, but also I just like how it's all laid out, especially the content editor. So we'll talk about that next week when we write our content. We'll be using Surfer quite heavily. Some other tools of trade that I use, like I said, for anything around backlinks or even looking at things around YouTube and doing research around that. I love Ahrefs, really cool. SEMrush is probably my go-to Swiss Army knife. Like I said, Ahrefs is really good, but it's very bloody expensive, and SEMrush is much more competitively priced, and you're going to get more bang for your buck, especially as a beginner. If you're running an agency or something like that, Ahrefs is probably something you would want to have as well as SEMrush. So like compared to, like rather than one or the other, you probably want to have both. Google Sheets, you can have Google Sheets or you can have Excel, depends on what you're more comfortable with. I use more Google Sheets now, which I never thought would be the case because I've always loved Excel. But Google Sheets is becoming a really cool tool for sorting things, for analyzing, for grouping, all of that stuff that you need to do in SEO. So I think Google Sheets is definitely another tool that is on my list. And then KW Finder for doing keyword specific research. I still think it's a great tool. We'll talk about that next week as well. And layering on extra keywords. And it also helps when it comes time to writing those really big, long ultimate guide pieces as well. And I think it's a really great tool for just all around keyword research. So these are kind of my tools of the trade when it comes to doing on-page SEO and content SEO. So like I said, we're going to delve more into these next week when we start to pull things apart and we start to actually create, we'll do a live example. So these are the ones I recommend. So have a look, start checking them out and see if they might be something you might want to add to your arsenal as well. So the other thing I'm going to talk about when we talk about technical SEO is the Shopify SEO apps. If I was using something like WooCommerce, I'm probably doing a lot of this stuff myself because it's PHP based and I can get in and play around with everything. Unless you've got Shopify Plus, which I do for one of my clients, then it kind of limits your ability to go in and tinker with things. So it makes it a lot harder. But I mean, Shopify is kind of locked off in a lot of ways too, in terms of URL structures and that sort of thing, and the way it's laid out. So I find apps are probably a lot easier to get a lot of this stuff done than having to do it manually, which is what I would do if I was using anything else like Magento, or I hate Magento, but if I was using that or WooCommerce or something that I've built from scratch, I would probably just go in and do that myself rather than having to use apps. But anyway, so there's some that I recommend and I think you should check these out, and I'll quickly go over what they are, but we'll talk more about reviewing these when I do technical SEO. So SEO Booster, SEO Manager, it's kind of like your all-in-one Things are going to look at 404 pages, redirects, pretty much everything you need to do in here. Just making sure that everything's tidy and that your house is in order when it comes to SEO. I think that's a good one. Both of these tools are really good. I find them pretty similar, but like I said, go in, do your research, see which ones you would like better, and I'll review these kind of more in depth in the technical SEO video. AMP, so accelerated mobile pages, is something that Google is starting to love more and more. It just helps pages load a lot faster, and especially if you're doing content pages on mobile. So we'll talk a lot more about that in our technical SEO. But there's an app for that called Amplify Me, which is, rather than having to do all of the AMP stuff manually, you can just get this app and it should help you sort that out. There's JSON-LD for SEO, which is a schema app, and it was bloody expensive. But it's a one-off payment, so I think it's $300, and you just pay it once off, and that's it. You've paid for it for life with all the updates. Or you could do something which is more of a month-on-month payment. I think it's around, I'm trying to remember if it's $14, don't quote me on that, a month, which is Schema Plus for SEO, and it kind of does a similar thing. Or if you really know what you're doing when it comes to schema, you can go in and create this yourself. And we'll talk a little bit more about schema and why it's important again when we look at technical SEO. Crush Picks and Tiny IMG SEO. So this is actually making a site faster, because a lot of people upload really high quality images when it comes to their products, or just those banners and things like that, and it can really slow down your website. So using these two apps will actually help you minimize how quick something loads. Sorry, it'll help speed up how fast something loads, because it will start to crush the images in terms of it'll crush the file size without crushing too much quality, because you also want to make sure the quality's there. You don't want it to look like some pixelated 8-bit thing that came off Alex the Kid on Sega Master System. So you want to make sure that the quality is still there, but that the sizes and file sizes are smaller, so they load faster on the page. SEO Doctor, Sitemap, and Meta. This is really important. Sitemap is really important. Again, we'll talk about that more in the technical side, but this makes that really easy. And then obviously the two big ones, Google Search Console and Google Analytics, which are both free, both Google products, and you should be using these in SEO as well. So you should have those now. If you don't have these now, Google Search Console and Google Analytics, go and get them, set them up. And if you're confused about Google Analytics and you're using that or Google Search Console, maybe both, let me know, and we'll do a whole video on that as well, do a whole walkthrough. I might even do a YouTube Live on that as well. So that's it for today's video. Hopefully this makes a lot of sense to you, and if you have any questions, put it in the comments below. I'm more than happy to go in and answer any questions. I'm thinking about doing a live stream as well, probably next week. So the way I kind of want to do this is put out one video and then do a live stream on the topic to answer any questions, and then we move on to the next one and then do another live stream. So for this one, if you have any questions, make sure you pop it in the comments below, and we'll cover them in the live stream next week. So I'm hopefully going to do 2 videos next week. One being the live stream, so we can go in and answer questions, or even if I do and we leave it at the end, I'll do a whole big one, and then we'll just do a whole Q&A. Maybe we'll consolidate these two and do a on-page and content one, and then we'll do a link building one and a technical one. We'll just make sure that we have a Q&A for each one of those, so you can ask questions. So if you're really confused about anything I mentioned today, make sure you put it in the comments below. Next week, we're going to do much more of a practical version of this, where we're going to actually take a topic, we're going to do some research on it, we are going to create a cluster around it, and then we're going to work out kind of what links we need and all that sort of stuff. So make sure that you tune in for next week. So thanks for tuning in. We are going to have a really cool video next week on doing a really practical example of this using all the tools that I mentioned. And if you have any questions, like I said, put in the comments below. I'm also going to start talking about my streetwear brand that I'm building. It's a little bit different. If anyone's interested in doing print on demand, but actually more for building a brand and not just having some crappy, print on demand stuff that you're just trying to get some cheap, quick wins for and make a bit of money on, then if you're trying to build a brand, I'm going to talk about that, because it's a little bit different. So a bit more like anti-marketing, or very different to how most people would promote, a product. So We're going to talk about scarcity and why that's really important. It's scarcity, having less of something in terms of building streetwear is really, really important, or building a brand, because you want to build that hype. And we're going to talk a lot about that as well in the coming months, how I'm going to go around it. And I've actually got another channel that I'm building around that brand and kind of creating that brand, creating a streetwear brand, something I've always wanted to do. I've been a massive Jordan fan, like Air Jordans and sneakerhead for a while. Also really been into the whole, just the streetwear movement over time as well. So if you want to see more of that, if you're more here for the print on demand stuff, but more specifically how to build a brand, we're going to talk about that on my other channel, which I should be dropping probably in the next couple of weeks. So just keep watching these videos, and I will let you know once that channel's up, and we can send you over there, and you can have a look at what I'm doing. But until then, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next week. Keep loving e-commerce. I'll see you then.